Hey guys, it's Kwana back again with another review and recap of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Lived. This is episode 2 entitled Gone. Episode 1 was entitled Years, and episode 3, quick spoiler, is going to be called By. So, Years Gone By. Love the little storytelling in that. I'm going to be honest, I think I liked episode 2 more than episode 1. Now, of course, it is no surprise I'm such a fan of Denai, such a fan of Michonne, but there's one character in particular who completely stole the show for this episode for me, and I want to get into it, but hopefully by the time you're watching this video, you've had a chance to watch The Ones Who Live on AMC, or you've already seen the advanced version on AMC Plus, which airs 15 hours early, so good for us. But if you do nothing else, please do me a favor, and if you enjoy these recaps and reviews, click the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so that you can see every time I drop a review. And let's go ahead and talk about this episode. This episode did not pick up where we left off in episode 1, but instead we too get to see a montage of everything that has brought Michonne to this point. We see a little bit of glimpses with her life with Rick, and then we see, of course, the infamous bridge explosion, her thinking that Rick is gone, her finding out that Rick might be alive, her leaving Judith and telling Judith that she's going to bring him back. And then we meet up with Michonne not long after she saved Bailey and Aiden, who were the two individuals that she rescued on that final day. When we meet up with them, they finally reconnect to the survivor caravan that they are members of. Remember, this caravan doesn't stop for anyone. And we meet up with Aiden's sister, who talks about being willing to allow Michonne to join them. But Michonne doesn't want to join them. She just wants to find Rick. And more importantly, she doesn't believe in this theology or this methodology of leaving people behind. That's not what our survivors do. They don't leave people behind. They go back for them. And that has been their motto and their belief system and core to who Michonne is since jump. We also get to meet the MVP of the episode, a character by the name of Nat. Nat is the engineer of the survivors caravan. He is a tech guy. He understands how fire works, how explosions work. He can make things work. He is my absolute altogether favorite character from this episode. He is disgusted by the fact that two people who he's so close with, Bailey and Aiden, were just left behind, and he is berating Aiden's sister when he looks behind him and he sees that they have been returned and that it was Michonne who rescued him. This immediately connects him to Michonne, and he tries to get her to stay because in his mind it's going to be safe. Ultimately, she refuses, and he says, "Oh, no problem, we'll give you a horse anyway." He eventually convinces her to allow them to make her some gear if she just stays for at least one night. And this is where she gets this awesome armor that she's wearing when her and Rick finally reunite. His character, the character of Nat, is just so kind-hearted, even though you can tell that this has been a difficult life for him. Something along his own core belief system has been shaken by the fact that he also doesn't believe they should be leaving people behind. It feels so much like what you did in the early days of the apocalypse, and they've all grown beyond this. They've been living in this world for quite some time now, and they should be able to survive going back and getting people, because ultimately you are stronger when you're with others. Groups are stronger for the most part. Not always. Eventually, Michonne goes off, but not before she finds out that there's this massive herd of migratory walkers that come south, and they don't quite know what causes them. They go south during the winter, and they head back north in the summer. If you read the comic books, you know exactly why that is. It's because the walkers don't really survive well in the cold temperatures and the snow, which, if they find this out, opens up so much for this world if they decide to play in this world a bit longer and head out west towards the mountains. Just saying. or even north of New York, perhaps, what that will look like for them. This is where we get this awesome scene where Michonne in her armor rides up, and it is just literally like 5 or 10,000 walkers, just a sea of walkers. Suddenly, though, she launches one of the weapons that Nat makes for her, and it sets this gas man walker who's covered in gasoline containers ablaze, and he blows up, and his head ricochets toward her and knocks her off of her horse. I just knew our girl was gone for a second. Then I had to remember, no, we saw her. We know that she's going to be okay, but not before two other explosions drive the sea of walkers apart, and they part like the Red Sea. And we see that Nat, Aiden, Bailey, and a few other members of the caravan have followed her here and decided to break apart and to join her on her search for Rick, and ultimately join her to the community of survivors, because they too believe that people are better together. Unfortunately, they're not together very long, because as they are roaming toward a city very close to Philadelphia, they see a CRM helicopter that begins to rain bottles of gas, I believe it's chlorine gas, onto them, and it causes their lungs to burn. Most of the members of their caravan die immediately. The few that are able to survive make it into this department store, where Michonne is able to find some oxygen tanks and rig them up, but not before we lose Aiden and Bailey. I was so sad because of course we learned in the episode that Aiden was pregnant, and it's always a beautiful thing when someone manages to bring forth life in this universe, because it happens so rarely. And I was really looking forward to seeing if they could survive and make it back to the survivors. That would have been a nice inclusion. But alas, they don't make it. But it was great to see kind of their story end and then be able to at least go out together. Nat is able to survive after Michonne puts Bailey and Aiden down, and they survive together, and they are trapped in this department store for at least a full year, but it actually looks a little bit longer than a year. It looks like it was a year and a half, possibly even 2 years, and this explains why it's taken her so long. So just to keep in mind, these are very loose estimates, but from the moment that Rick was blown up on the bridge to the point where Michonne leaves is about 3 to 4 years, because if you remember, RJ was about 4 or 5 years old when she leaves. That's where she rescues Bailey and Aiden. She goes with them to the caravan. They part ways. The CRM attacks them. They are there for at least a year, because we see the changing seasons on one of the skylights. We know it's at least a year, possibly a little bit more, because it looks like the season changed one more time. And they are departed for at least 2 years. And that explains why it has been 6 years since she's been able to see Rick. So everything altogether was about 6 years. Finally, in talking with that, they decide that it's time to go, and so they're going to continue their journey, but not before he continues to give her a little bit of wisdom, and we learn a little bit more about his life story, and we also get this idea of what the Japanese on the phone that Rick left her means, which is like, just believe a little while longer. And he basically informs her that like she can believe that Rick is out there and alive, and that bring her some sort of peace, but ultimately she needs to go back home and get reunited with her children. She wants to try one more time, and he of course is not going to leave her side. And this is when we find out the big reveal of who attacked the helicopters from last week's episode. And it was Nat and Michonne. They were the ones who took the helicopter down. Like, how much of just a total baddie do you have to be to take down a helicopter? And then to take out the soldiers who were manning the helicopter right before you take down Rick. Like, I thought that maybe they had just stumbled upon them, but no, they took them down solo. I cried when Michonne and Rick are reunited. First of all, we rarely got a chance to see them really be intimate and have like intimacy, like just affection for each other on screen, even in the original Walking Dead days. So seeing them kiss, it was just pure romantic moment. This is why I said on Twitter that I need Denai in a rom-com. She just gives such wholesome, good vibes and energy, and I think she would be great in a romantic comedy. Just saying, if anybody wants to put it out there. And then Nat shows up and is like, is this the guy? And all of those good moments, all of that good joy, all of that happiness is immediately taken from us when suddenly Nat is shot through the back and through the chest and he dies. I just can't help but say, to me, one of the best characters that the show has given us in such a long time. And so to lose him was devastating. Rick quickly informs Michonne that the rest of the CRM is coming. We can hear the helicopters in the distance. She's going to have to pretend to be a beta. So he tells her she needs to come up with a fake identity, a fake name. She needs to give off the aura that she is not a leader, that she is weak, that she is not a danger or a threat, and that once they get inside, they will continue to fight to get out together now that he knows that she's alive and safe. And she's not sure what to believe, but we can see that they're still completely diverged in their mentality. She still is a fighter. She wants to fight back. Rick is a little broken, and he's willing to do whatever it takes just to survive. And hopefully they can meet somewhere in the middle of all of that. She eventually does recreate this new identity, the name Dana, the fact that she was a part of a small group in Georgia. She's not completely lying about her background, right? She's retelling some of the story of her background, but in a way that doesn't connect her immediately to Alexandra, because originally they did find each other in Georgia. And then she makes it inside. We see that she gets the jacket. She's a member, she's a consignee, and Rick does find her. They reunite, they talk a little bit more. He finds out that Judith's still alive, but she does not tell him about RJ. Now, comment down below why you think that is. I have my thoughts and opinions. I think she knows that this is not quite the Rick that she knew, and she doesn't want to. I think she's waiting out to see how things play out. I think she thinks that it could cause more good or more damage than good, but I don't know. Let me know in comments why you think she chooses not to say anything about RJ. Ultimately, they part with a plan to just lay low and wait things out and see. She finds out about his hand, that he's no longer been trying to fight to get out, and you can tell that she's worried about this. She's worried that this Rick does not have the same belief system that she has, and that she's going to have to leave him behind. I think that begins to sow a seed in her mind. But ultimately, she crawls to the top of one of the towers and she sees just how massive the CRM is. And this is a formidable foe. The biggest foe that we've seen in Walking Dead history is the CRM. When Rick gets back to his room, who has been spying on them, who's been knowing everything, knows that Michonne is back. It is none other than Jadis. I love the character of Jadis, but this is not good for our guy and our girl at all, because she knows exactly that Michonne is not a beta. She is an alpha. She is a leader, and she knows everything, and she has the ability to not only take them out, but to take down their family. This does perhaps give us some clues that we're going to see more of the fam show up in this episode, and that there are wider implications for what happens in this show to the greater Walking Dead world. I missed this show so much in terms of being left on cliffhangers like this. I feel like a lot of television doesn't leave you on cliffhangers anymore. This type of a cliffhanger was so juicy. I'm going to be salivating for the whole week waiting for the next episode. But I thought that this episode was so good. I thought that seeing the emotional highs and lows of Michonne, getting to meet Nat, I genuinely almost like this episode better than last week's. But let me know down below in the comments, what did you think about this episode? Are you excited for next week? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, toodles.